our guest this evening is Jeremy Marshall. Jeremy is an author. He has written a book called Beyond the Big Sea. I've got a little copy of it here. It's been my real delight to read a book which is about Jeremy's story coming into dealing with cancer. One of the delights of such a, I guess, a sad topic is just the way Jeremy speaks so honestly and in such a candid manner about his experience. And I've just found it both touching, personally moving, and but also extremely encouraging. And I think we'll get to journey through Jeremy's story this evening. Jeremy, if I could begin, we'd love to get to know you a little bit. Just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. How have you come to this wonderful place we call Sevenoaks?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, John. Yeah. So we've lived in Sevenoaks for the last 20 years. I'm married to Jeanette. We've got 3 adult children. A daughter who's married. She's in Cambridge, and then 2 sons. In fact, our younger son just got engaged last week, so that was great. We used to live in Kemsing, and then we moved into Sevenoaks. Originally, I'm from Hertfordshire, but I try and keep that quiet. Right, it's not as cool as being from Kent. And yeah, we'll come on to my story. But like a lot of people in Sevenoaks, I used to work in the City of London. So I'm one of these evil bankers, right? I'm not a religious person. You don't get less religious than bankers. So every morning, like a lot of people, I used to get on the train and come back. I used to work for Credit Suisse for about 20 years, and then about a dozen years ago, I got headhunted to be the chief executive of a family-owned private bank called Seahor & Co.
Wonderful. Seahor, I've not heard of that bank. My daughter's got a little piggy bank. Would she be able to kind of open an account with them?
Well, it was like everything in life, it all depends on who you know, John. But yeah, the bank is 350 years old, and it's still owned by the same family. But I was the first non-family chief executive, which was a real privilege. And it's got some really amazing buildings. The head office is in Fleet Street. It's been there since 1690. And maybe it's not the place for your daughter's savings account. The usual size is a few million. So it's what's called private banking. Rich people, in other words. But
she's into those chocolate coins, so I don't know if they're worth a bit more or not. But we can have a chat.
I'd recommend not chocolate coins, but Bitcoin would be the answer, John. Yeah.
Very good. And can you tell us a little bit about your family? You mentioned there's an engagement. You're married to Jeanette. I understand she likes to go clubbing in Tunbridge Wells. What's that on about? Why is she out at Tunbridge Wells in the late hours of the evening?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's not doing it now, of course, because of COVID, but she's been for years doing street pastoring. Yeah, which does mean being out at all the hours. Our boys were very terrified of running into her. That would be, if you're out clubbing in Tunbridge Wells, that famous nightclub centre, right? The last thing you want to do is to run into your mother. And then, our children all went to school in Sevenoaks. Cricket was their big love, really. Well, not our daughter, more art, but the boys, in cricket, and played at the Vine and for other things. Our youngest son's goal was to try and hit the ball into a passing convertible on the Vine. He got close once or twice, but never got it in.
I'll take special note of that next time I see some young cricketers playing and I go past on my push bike. So yeah. So you've got this wonderful career. I imagine you've traveled quite a lot of the world through that career, and you've got this lovely family, and you live in sort of Kent, which is the Garden of England. That sounds like you're living the dream, right? Like that's. Were you pretty satisfied in that kind of situation?
Yeah, very much so, John. I really enjoyed my job. I was very fortunate. I think a lot of people in the city are under great pressure, but in a place like that was a fantastic place to work. My office had old masters in it. I imagine St. Nick's church offices have similar. I think we had several Canalettos and other things like that. So yeah, it was a dream job. And dealing with wealthy people is fun. I mean, they're not always the easiest people to deal with, but yeah, it was a good job, very good job. Yeah, kind of a dream job, you could say. Yeah.
So life is wonderful. You've got the security. You've got the this sort of job that is taking you into all sorts of different fulfilling aspects of life, and you've got the wonderful family. And Seven Oaks is a pretty safe place, right? Like, it feels like life is pretty good in Seven Oaks. But then your life took quite a bit of a turn back in 2005.
2012. Yeah, that's right,
Well,
John. Yeah, one day in the shower, I felt this tiny lump on my rib, and yeah, at my wife's urging, I went to the GP, who said, "Oh, it's just a fatty lump, but we'll get it checked out." And it's funny how things change, right? Just a tiny, tiny lump. Suddenly, what do you feel? You feel afraid because you think, and that's what it was. It's cancer, right? So in the end, I ended up at the Royal Marsden, and they said you've got this really rare type of cancer. It's a sarcoma, which is cancer of the muscle tissue. There are about 150 subtypes, and this is the one you've got. But we caught it early, and we should be able to deal with it. So I went through about 6 months of treatment, and then for about 2 years, John, everything went back to normal. And then 5.5 years ago, we're in the drive. I was just at a friend's house up by the rugby club having dinner, and I went to adjust my collar. And as I did that, I felt this massive lump on my collarbone, not like a tiny pea, but like a golf ball. And immediately I knew what it was. I knew it was the cancer. And yeah, within a few seconds, my life changed forever. So I made my excuses. I said, I feel ill. I went home, went back to the hospital, and yeah, a few days later, Friday the 13th of June 2015, I was in the waiting room, and the nurse said, "Please come through." And as we walked down a little corridor, she said, "I'm really sorry." And that was the only warning I had, because when I went into the room, there were lots of people there. And they said, "Look, we don't know how we missed this." About a year later, they decided it was a completely unrelated, also very rare type of cancer. So yeah, that's why they didn't pick it up, the screening, after the first one. But anyway, you've got tumors everywhere. And yeah, there's not really a great deal you can do. So, the obvious question you ask, John, is, well, how long do you think I've got? And they always say, well, never exactly tell, but 18 months. So at that, I burst into tears. Please don't think I'm some kind of cancer expert or religious person. I'm a banker, right? And it's terrifying to live with cancer. And since then, I've been through, intense treatment. If you can never get into Pembury over the last 5 years, it's my fault, right? I'm a single bed blocker. So I've had 30 chemotherapies. I've had a dozen operations. I was blind for a while. I lost the sight in both eyes. I've got it back in one, and it's amazing how low the legal requirements are for driving. So watch out if you're on the drive.
That worries me, Jeremy, because my left eye is really bad as well, and they let me drive as well. So between you and I mean,
Yeah,
Seven Oaks is not a safe place to drive around, brother.
exactly. What a pair.
Yeah.
So this year I'd done ophthalmology, I'd done oncology. So I thought, what about cardiology? So I had serious heart issues over the summer, probably related to COVID, although I kept testing negative. And I was in hospital on my own for quite a while. That was also terrifying. Just to be there stuck. You couldn't even leave the room. And I just finished chemotherapy, just a couple of months ago. So I've done all those chemos. The tumors shrink when I do chemo, and then when I stop, they grow again. But I'm alive, as you can see, and I'm happy to be alive. But yeah, my life has changed forever.
In this book, you speak about, really candidly, about kind of the journey from kind of just feeling everything's fine to anxiety, but then anxiety tipping over into fear. And I guess loads of us are accustomed to anxiety that you mentioned, but fear is like this deeper water, isn't it? Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Because you speak about it so honestly in the book.
I compare it to being on a train going into London, and we're all on the kind of train of life, aren't we? And what do we think will be at the end of the line? Retirement, right? And go on holiday. Now, actually, of course, there is a stop after retirement, but we don't want to think about that, do we? One of the strange things about COVID is I like to say to everybody cheerily, welcome to my world, right? The last 5.5 years, every time I was on a train and someone sneezed or coughed, I was afraid, right? And now we all feel like that. It's strange, isn't it? So I went through that experience, John, of having fear. And if you think of the railway line analogy, it's like you're on the train and suddenly the train shifts onto another line. and the destination is death in 18 months. And in the book, I say, yeah, it's like the Grim Reaper comes onto the train and sits opposite you and starts looking at you. So yeah, we'll come on to the Christian faith in a minute, but I'm afraid of dying. I think, look at what's going on now, right? Look at COVID. And being a Christian isn't an insurance policy where you can say, yeah, everything's great, everything's fine. No, I'm afraid of dying, even though I believe, which will come on to something beyond death. I mean, I've been in hospices with, my father and my mother-in-law both dying of cancer. It's a pretty grim process. So yeah, it's fearful. And every time I go and get a scan result, which determines, how the cancer's doing, I feel afraid. There's even a technical term for that, John. It's called scanxiety, like scan and anxiety together. Scanxiety.
Yeah, I hear you. So, yeah, thanks for speaking so honestly about that. The other thing you kind of mentioned in the book is this experience of losing control. So you're in a position of quite a lot of authority in your career. People tend, I imagine, you're used to sort of commanding quite a lot of authority with those under you. You're a CEO. But then all that gets flipped upside down with control to the point where people aren't even coming back to you sort of with the news of your diagnosis and sort of at the time scale that you're used to. And what was that like, sort of that change from having a load of control to almost sort of none?
Yeah, look, it's humbling, John, right? And we all like to think we're in control, and especially I think, no offense to anyone watching, that is a 7X thing, right? And where do we think our security is, right? Money, right? Okay, if we've got lots of money in the bank account, we think, well, even if I lose my job, I'll be fine. But suddenly, without warning, yeah, the tables are completely turned. So yeah, you're just being treated for cancer is a lot of just waiting around, and you're emphatically not in control, and you don't know anything about what's happening, and you just have to follow blindly the instructions. So that's humbling, and sometimes, yeah, like being locked in a room, it's even, I would say, terrifying or humiliating at the same time. Like being in a hospital room in the COVID crisis, they wouldn't even let me. I think after a while there, I'm going stir crazy. Can I just go and stand in the corridor? And the nurse said, look, I'm really sorry. If you do that, we'll have to call security. So you just stayed in this room. It was like being in prison, but I imagine prison probably has better food than the NHS.
For loads of people who, I mean, I imagine for loads of people who would be in your shoes, the temptation to give in to despair must be quite strong. Like how have you managed not to give in to despair and just say, you know what, I'm just going to throw in the towel?
Yeah, well, that's the same answer, John, as I give to how do I cope with fear. I've been through some really unpleasant experiences, which the squeamish among you I won't go into, like being operated on my eye with local anaesthetic was one of them, but others as well. When you're in a cardiac MRI, you're in what feels like a coffin, and when I go through that, I do feel afraid. And then I remember the promises of Jesus. He said, look, I'm with you always, even to the very end of the age, even in a cardiac MRI machine. Or God's promise, I'll never leave you or forsake you. Or perhaps the most famous verse in the Bible is the 23rd Psalm, the Lord's my shepherd. Maybe some of you know that. And there's a verse there that says, yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. So that's been my experience in walking through the valley of the shadow of death, which I've been walking through for the last 8 years. And now, which is strange, isn't it? We're all walking through that. And there's no bypass around that valley. The A21, you can bypass Sevenoaks, but you can't bypass the valley of the shadow of death. What does the Christian experience in that? Well, two things, I think. One is the presence of God. That makes all the difference to me. I couldn't go on without that. And of course, that begs the question, which we'll come on to, well, is it just kind of wishful thinking or whatever? But okay, bear with me. That's amazing. The experience of knowing God in the middle of tremendous suffering. And then secondly, if you think of the valley of the shadow of death, the shadow, well, for a shadow to exist, there has to be a light, right? And the last verse of that psalm says, goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So why do I have a hope? Because I believe I know where I'm going. And where am I going? I'm going home. Going home. Home is not the drive. Home is to be with God. And that makes all the difference. And I believe that's something unique and wonderfully distinctive about being a Christian. And it's a particular kind of hope. As you know, John, I'm a keen football fan. And my team, you might think I have enough suffering in life without adding to it, is Watford, right? So I was hoping Watford would win the FA Cup, but it wasn't to be. We got knocked out, right? And a lot of people say hope. I hope it's going to be a nice day tomorrow. Your kid's saying, I hope it snows. But the Christian hope is not like that. The Christian hope is something we can rely on, something trustworthy. And I'm happy to stake my life that Jesus Christ has the answer to death.
You speak about the presence of God. That sounds like something straight out of the Bible. So, like Adam and Eve, weren't they people who hung out with God? What does it feel like to be in the presence of God, or to have His presence with you? Like that sounds like such a sort of supernatural or out of the ordinary experience.
Yeah, it's nothing like that. And again, like, as I keep saying, right, I'm not a religious person. I'm a banker, right? If I was a vicar or something, but I'm not. No, it's not a supernatural thing. It's not a vision. What I'd say is, it's a check that can be cashed, right? Someone might give you a check. If your daughter gave you a check for $10 million, £10 million, John, that wouldn't be worth anything, would it? Unless her commercial activities have been more successful.
Not unless she's been up to things I don't know about.
Yeah, exactly. So the question is, the promises of God, the promises that I mentioned earlier, are they reliable? Are they trustworthy? Can they be cashed? So Jesus made several statements about death and about life after death when he was here. He stood, for example, at the grave of a friend of his called Lazarus. And Lazarus's sister, called Martha, was really upset. And she struggled, and I think a lot of people do that, with a kind of mixture of, well, yeah, maybe there is something there, but how can that be? And Jesus said to her, well, your brother's going to rise again. And Martha says, well, yeah, okay, I know he's going to rise again at some future date. And then Jesus says, Martha, look at me. Then he says, I'm the resurrection and I am the life. I am the resurrection and I am the life. So that's the hope on which a Christian can live, that there is an answer to death. Later on in the Bible, Jesus says this. He says, I have the keys of death and hell. Now, if you have the keys of something, let's say a house or a car, unless you've nicked it, that usually means you own it, right? It's yours. And that's what Jesus says. I own death. And he says also that I've conquered death. So the Christian hope is not built on wishful thinking. It's built on some specific claim. And this is the claim. And if you're watching, and you're not a Christian and you're not sure, I would invite you to explore this claim. Christianity stands or falls on this. Did Jesus rise from the dead?
Rise from the dead, do you mean sort of like, I don't know, his spirit kind of just keeps on going on and kind of the stuff that we see in Hollywood? Or what do you mean by rise from the dead?
No, that's not what I mean, John. I mean, if you were there on the morning of Easter Sunday, AD 33 or 34, that the things that the 4 eyewitness accounts speak of, that the stone was rolled away, that Jesus was dead for 3 days and that he came back bodily, that really happened. And if that happened, then Christianity is true and there is an answer to death. And all the checks, if you like, all the promises that I've talked about are trustworthy. And if it didn't happen, it's the biggest con trick of all time, right? So maybe you think, well, okay, how do we know it's true? That's what I'd invite you to investigate. Being a Christian and having this hope, having a hope that is reliable, is not about a kind of step in the dark and, well, I hope there's something there. It's based on historical facts, and you can check those facts out. And for example, Jesus was seen by hundreds and hundreds of people.
You're saying that you're
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Sorry, continue.
No, go ahead, please.
It just sounds like you're saying that your hope in the future is based on something that happened for real in the past. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, look, there's kind of 3 legs to it, John. 2,000 years ago, in an obscure corner of the Roman Empire, Jesus, who Christians believe was God, did he or did he not rise from the dead? Is there an answer to death? And then in the future, that being a Christian means, yeah, we know where we're going. Where are we going? We're going home. We're going to be with God. What will that be like? No more death. Death itself will die. The Bible says that God himself will swallow death. made a rather poorly cooked pasta earlier. I ate it and it was gone, disappeared. That's the same image that God uses. But there's a bit in the middle also, which is that we can know Jesus Christ now. That's what being a Christian is about. It's not about being religious or going to church or trying to do good or trying to earn our way to God. No, it's about meeting Jesus Christ and realizing that he is the answer to all the problems that we have, which is not just physical death, it's also eternal death, separation from God. There's a fundamental problem that we all have, which is we've all rebelled against God. We've all turned away from him. And the Bible says the wages of sin is death. But the good news is that Jesus stands in the way as we're heading away from God and says, come back home, come back to the Father.
As you speak about sort of the past, giving you that great hope for the future, but actually there's a really present experience of his presence with you day to day. How has that kind of helped you through the hospital visits and
Yeah.
the phone calls that, you know, oh no, there's another hospital visit and so
Well, look, please don't think I'm a good person no, I struggle with this, right? I'm a Christian. I believe with all my heart it's true, but it's still hard to go through this. I would compare my experience, John, to a story in the Bible. So Jesus one day says to his disciples, let's go to the other side of the lake. Lake Galilee's maybe 20 miles across, right? And they're all experienced fishermen. So they get in the boat and Jesus goes to sleep. And suddenly a tremendous storm blows up out of nothing, right? That's cancer, but it can also be coronavirus. It can be redundancy. It can be anything. And what are the disciples like? And what am I like in life? They're afraid, right? They're afraid. They're terrified. Meanwhile, Jesus is still asleep. And eventually the disciples roughly shake him and wake him up. Don't you care? We're going to drown, because they are drowning. The boat's sinking. So in the storms of life, we may either doubt that God exists at all, or we may doubt, well, maybe he does exist, but he doesn't really care about me. That's what the disciples feel. That's sometimes what I feel. I feel like, God, have you forgotten me? Why are you making me go through all this? Then Jesus calms the storm. He just says, be still. And suddenly, billions of molecules are rearranged, and it's a dead calm, not a breath of wind, from the boat sinking with a raging storm to total silence. Then it says this, and that's also been my experience, John. Then they were even more afraid. So the disciples were even more afraid in the dead mill pond calm to in the raging storm. Why? Because it began to dawn on them who this man was in the boat, that this was God. And that's been my experience also, as I've been through these tremendous storms, and you know, I'm in one right now, frankly. Then I suddenly realize who Jesus is, and that he is God and that he can still the storm. So my invitation to you, taking the boat analogy, right, is if you are a Christian, then if Jesus is in your boat, he will bring you to the other side, which is to himself through death. And if Jesus is not in your boat, then, sorry to be blunt, each one of us has got to go through death, haven't we? And that's what COVID reminds us. Benjamin Franklin famously said, you can avoid everything in life except death and taxes. Having worked in private banking, I can tell you that's not altogether true, right? Not any of the firms I've worked in, of course, but other firms. So we can't avoid death. So that's why Jesus invites himself into our boat. So he stands on the shore and says, I must stay with you. I must be in your boat. And what does he bring? He brings life. He brings life. So that's why I have hope, because I believe there's an answer to death. Otherwise, and we can take questions on this, John, you know, there is no hope, right? There are, I would say, another worldview, right? Comparable to the Christian one I've tried to set out is a kind of Richard Dawkins view, right? Dawkins says this in his book, River Out of Eden. He says, the universe has nothing to say to us but blind, pitiless indifference. Blind, pitiless indifference. Nothing has any meaning. There's no purpose on life. This is it. Once we're dead, we're dead. All the friendships, all the love, all the happy experiences, all the family, it's all gone. It's all utterly, utterly meaningless. And the Christian view is 180 degrees different, which is, no, there is hope. There's wonderful hope. But the key question is not which of the two is more useful. I think that's kind of obvious, right? If you're in my position. And maybe some of you are thinking that yeah, okay, if I was in Jeremy's position, I might feel the same thing. The key question is not which is more hopeful, but is it true, right? Is the Christian claim true? Is there really hope? And on whom do we base our hope? On Jesus Christ and him rising from the dead.
That's really helpful and encouraging to hear that actually there is hope in a universe which people like Dawkins think is indifferent to us and couldn't care less if we're a speck of carbon that's here today and gone tomorrow. So thank you so much for sharing that. What I might do now is I'll send you all a little message in the chat function. And in that message, you can respond to me by asking questions. We know you've got questions out there because we just heard this incredible story from Jeremy. And if you could please send those in. You can also text me if you prefer to do that. You can do that anonymously, that's fine. I'm sure that people have loads of questions. There's just one that is here. It says, has cancer made you feel angry or disappointed with God?
Not angry, but I do sometimes wonder, Lord, what's going on? I wonder this at the moment, to be honest, John. Why am I going through this? What's going on? Lord, have mercy. And whatever we feel, but other friends of mine do feel angry with God. I think everybody's different, right? But God can cope with our emotions. So I would say whatever our emotions, and if some of you have been through suffering or had family or friends who have been through terrible suffering, bring however you feel to God. God meets us. God meets us in our feelings, in our sadness. So I never felt angry, but I do sometimes wonder, and I wonder today, Lord, what is going on in my life? I just can't cope with this.
Have you felt that you need to sort of pretend with God when you're going through that, or?
I don't see the point, really. If there is a God, he knows everything, John. No. So sometimes I just pray, God, help me. It's almost like a kind of baby's cry for food, right?
Yeah.
Help.
Yeah.
And that's okay. God hears. God to pray, by the way, we don't need to go to church. We don't need to put our hands together or close our eyes. Prayer is just talking to God, and God talks back to us, I believe, primarily through his word, through the Bible. And if you're watching this and you're interested or curious, I would invite you to say this prayer. Oh God, if you're there, show yourself to me. Oh God, if you're there, show yourself to me. And I believe God will show himself to you, and he can show himself in whatever ways he likes. A friend of mine who runs a hedge fund had in blazing letters in the middle of his bedroom one night, Jesus Christ is the Son of God, right? That's pretty unusual, but God can do whatever he likes. But normally, how does God speak to us? He speaks to us through stuff he's had written to us, which is the Bible, especially the 4 eyewitness accounts of Jesus's life. Yeah. Jesus Christ is what the Bible is all about. That's about what the Christian religion is all about. And the primary Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these are 4 eyewitness accounts written within a short period of Jesus's life, death, and resurrection that tell us what's Jesus like. So how do we get to know God? We can talk to God, and he talks to us.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned the Bible. There's a few prayers in the Bible out there that are pretty honest towards God, found in the Psalms, like my God, why have you forsaken me? So your experience is sort of goes down the ages with these other people who've contributed to it. A few more questions coming in. Here's one that says, so Jeremy, do you ever believe maybe that God is saving you from what the world is becoming? You may see it as bad now, but maybe what's waiting for you is so much worse. So much better. Sorry, I misread that. So much. Maybe what's waiting for you is so much better. I apologize.
Yeah, I don't know. God's ways are inscrutable. Because if there is a God who made the whole universe and everything in it, his purposes and his plans are so far beyond our understanding. I mean, I had a roommate, Chris, from university, my closest friend probably. He spent 30 years as an environmentalist, lovely Christian guy, wonderful. Spent time building a nature reserve in the middle of a war zone in the Middle East. Anyway, a year ago, he and his wife were on a field trip to South Africa, and they came onto a bridge, and the car they were in flipped over the bridge, and they were killed instantly. And you think, well, God, how can that happen? I don't know. I don't know. But I do know, that God meets us in our suffering. And the reason I can say that is that the central Christian claim about Jesus Christ is not just that Jesus came into the world, but that he suffered. So Jesus, the night before he was arrested, said, "Father, if it's your will, take this cup away from me," by which he meant the cup of suffering. "But let not your will, but my will be done." And Jesus went to the cross. He went through suffering. And I find that makes an incredible difference, John, because it means I'm also not alone in suffering, right? God, because he became a human being, knows what it's like to suffer. Now we suffer, but Jesus didn't have to suffer because Christians believe he was perfect. So what drove him to go to the cross was two things. One, that there was no other way for the bill for all the wrong things that we've done to be paid for. No other way for a way to be opened up back to God. And secondly, what motivated him to do that? Love for us, love for you. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him would not perish, would not be separated from God, but have everlasting life. So I find that so comforting and reassuring.
Why does God love us, and why does he include bankers, do you think?
That's a great question. Ultimately, God loves us because God is love, right? So what's God like? All kinds of things we could say, but there's two aspects of God's love which I find amazing. One is, especially as a banker, is he doesn't give us what we deserve, right? What do we deserve? We deserve God to say, very well, you chose to stick two fingers up to me. You chose to do all kinds of things against me. Very well, you may have it your way. And he doesn't give us the judgment we deserve if we believe in him. That's what the Bible calls mercy. And then on the other side of the coin, if I may use a banking expression, he gives us something we don't deserve, right? So being a Christian is not about being good. It's not about earning our way to God. We can't do that. In fact, becoming a Christian is about realizing, actually, I need help. I need help. I'm, if you like, ill. So Jesus told the story of two men who went up to pray in the temple, the church. One was a very religious person, someone like you and me, John. He said, "I thank you, God, I'm not like other people, especially like that miserable sinner over there in the corner." And the miserable sinner in the corner said, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." And Jesus said the second one went home right with God. So yeah, why does God love us? I don't know. There's nothing in us that deserves it. But that's the wonderful, amazing news that God loved us so much that he died for us. Yeah, the eternal, universal God who made the universe became a human being 2,000 years ago, and he came into the world to die. And why did he die? To offer us a way back to him, to offer us a rescue, to offer us a way out of this cancer, coronavirus, screwed up world.
Thanks, Jeremy. Lots of more questions are coming in, and please do keep them coming in. So I'll just try and capture a couple into one question. When did you become a Christian? Was it before or after your diagnosis? And how much kind of church experience did you have before your diagnosis?
Yeah, I was brought up in an intensely Christian home and I hated it, right? I really hated it. And I rebelled against it. So I became a Christian independent of the church, I would say, because again, this may sound a bit mystical. I would say one day I met Jesus, or put it another way, I realized actually it was true. So I've been a Christian all my adult life. And I was a Christian before I had cancer. But it's a kind of an acid test, right? It's an acid test. It's one thing to say, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian, everything's great, life is good, thank you God." And it's quite another to be told you've got 18 months to live, yeah, or you've got to go through all these suffering and awful experiences. That's an
There are
acid test.
There are some, I guess, big speakers on YouTube and on TV that kind of give the impression that if you follow Jesus, basically, you won't get sick, and you'll be rich and stuff like that. But you're saying that's just completely not the case.
Absolutely, yeah, because there's no answer to death, right? Those people who claim to be able to kind of give you a Ferrari, if they wanted to prove their credentials, they should do what Jesus did, which is to go into a graveyard and say to people, "Okay, get up." No, they're con men, they're charlatans. Now, being a Christian is not about being rich or the good life or avoiding problems. In fact, I would say in some ways being a Christian means going to get more problems. So you may say, "Well, what kind of sales prospectus is that?" Well, to be a Christian means to follow Christ. So Christ, if you like, says, I'll use the analogy of a boat, as we're not by the sea in 7. I'll use the analogy of a house. Christ comes to us, he stands at the door and he knocks and he says, I want to come in. And we need him to come in. We need him to come in because we need hope, right? There's no hope if he's outside. But when he comes in, then he will start changing things in our life, and we won't like that. In fact, a friend of mine, who can't really go into the details, but he said, I had a room in my house. He went to church, had a room in my house which nobody else could go into, his wife or nobody. I don't mean a literal room, I mean a room, something. And eventually God said, no, I want that room, and I will have that room at whatever cost. Yeah, so there is a cost to being a Christian, which is we have to follow Christ. But what's Christ like? He's amazing. He's kind, he's gentle, he's lowly, he's humble. And he invites you all to come to him. I'm authorized, right, not by the PRA, but by the God Almighty, the maker of heaven and earth, to invite you to come and meet Jesus Christ and receive him into your lives. And he wants to come. He invites himself in. He invites himself in. All may come. Whatever you've done, it doesn't matter. Anyone may come, but you must come. There's no other way to God than through Jesus Christ. That's the only way to hope. Where's hope? It's in the hands of Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Jeremy. Another question and more coming in, but this one is touching on the idea of, I suppose, Jesus coming into your life and moving furniture around, if you like. and it says, how did knowing Jesus change other parts of your life? And another question sort of related to that is, how has knowing Jesus changed the way you, how does knowing that death is close change the way that you spend your time?
Yeah. On the first one, trust me, and my wife would confirm this more than anyone, I'm absolutely a work in process, right? So if you like, God comes into our house and starts remodeling us, but that remodeling will never finish this side of eternity. And yeah, what things are wrong with me? Plenty. Typical banker, right? Greedy, impatient, egotistical. And being a Christian, you wrestle with that, right? But do I become a perfect person? No. Every day as a Christian, you realize I screwed up. I did something wrong. Something I should have done that I didn't do. Like that poor man in the temple. God have mercy on me. And on the second question, yeah, I don't know how long I've got left. It might be, months or a couple of years or something. I don't know. But I just love, John, doing this. There's two things. I love spending time with my kids. Well, I can't do that now in COVID. Yeah, and I'm so happy. My daughter got married 2 years ago. I didn't think I'd see that. Now one of our sons got engaged. Hopefully I'll see that. But I just love doing this. I love telling people about Jesus Christ. And being a Christian is like having a vaccine, right? If I was sitting here, which sadly I'm not, and I had a huge stack of vaccines, and I said, hey, I've got the vaccine. Why don't you all come down to the drive and I'll give them to you? You would all beetle down, wouldn't you? You'd say, oh, wow, that's great. Wow, this guy's got the vaccine, right? But what we've got is something much more wonderful than a vaccine. We've got hope. So I just want to share it with you. I want to tell you, I want to recommend Jesus Christ to you. And that's what I love doing. So I love doing things like this. I do quite a lot, but it's nice to be in Sevenoaks, especially, to do it rather than in some other place I've never heard of.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Some other questions coming in. Why has God, do you think, allowed this coronavirus thing to kind of affect everyone?
I don't know, John. I think we have to be really careful not to give a glib answer to that. I think we can say this: God made everything good. In the beginning, the world was not like it is now. And what happened? Evil entered the world, right? And there's natural evil, but there's also evil within each one of us, if we're honest. Now in Sevenoaks, maybe we're better at covering that up than people in Wormwood Scrubs or something. But each one of us have done things that are wrong. But the wonderful news is that, So people say, and that's a very fair question, why doesn't God do something about coronavirus? Why doesn't he do something about suffering? To that, my answer is, he did. He did. That's why he came on a rescue mission. A man called Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German pastor who stood up against the Nazis in the 30s, and as a result was imprisoned and then executed. And just before he died, he smuggled out of his jail cell a little piece of paper, and on it he'd written this: only a suffering God can help us. So if you need help, there is help available. Where do we look for help? We look to a suffering God. Well, where's the suffering God? On the cross, right? On the cross. Jesus went through far worse than we'll ever go through. And he went to an unjust death, and he died for the love that he had for us. So if people ask me, I could attempt to give a kind of philosophical answer, but I won't. I would just say, go to Jesus Christ. That's the answer to suffering.
And you found him good and kind and faithful through your experience. Someone who's reliable. You can put you're confident of his presence with you. Someone's asked a question about the Holy Spirit. Kind of, how does he fit into things?
Yeah, sure. So look, that's a big question, right? The Trinity, it's a big subject. You can ask John about that in weeks to come, but a short answer is Christians believe in one God, three persons. The Father, who sends the Son, and the Son, when he goes back to be with the Father, sends the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit, he, not an it, it's not like the Force in Star Wars. The Holy Spirit is a he, is a person who shows us Jesus Christ. He's like a putting the lights on, putting the if you go past at Nick's, you get the searchlights, right, that light up the church. That's what the Holy Spirit does. So if you feel anything warm in your heart about Jesus, or even if you feel like, oh, kind of an interesting person, that's the Holy Spirit. Yeah. So Father, Son, and Holy Spirit work together to bring us back home. There's the famous story that Jesus told about the prodigal son, where the son has rejected the father and goes a long way off, and then he comes back. So he comes back to the Father. So the Father God invites us home. Come home. That's what you're made for. You're never going to find happiness anywhere else. God made us for himself, and our hearts are restless until we find rest in him, is what a man called Augustine said. And the Spirit and the Son, if you like, they're working with the Father to bring us back home. And they will, if that's the invitation. Come home to the Father through the Son, with the way home illuminated by the Holy Spirit.
Thanks, Jeremy. Some more questions coming through, and we've probably got about 5 more minutes of questions before we'll wrap things up and have a taster of Hope Explored with the first introductory film. But again, more and more questions coming through, and I'll just read this one. Do you believe even if you were an amazing person who tried to help everyone, you would go to hell if you were not religious? But a person who has maybe killed or sinned or found God would then go to heaven?
That's a great question. Do someone asked me that in a banking boardroom a while ago. They said, are you really saying, Jeremy, that if there was a very, very religious person in the city who gave all their money away to charity, but they would go to hell, which is just to go away from God, and if there was another person who was a corrupt mass murderer, but they said, God forgive me, they would be okay? And I said to them, and I'll say to you, well, it's funny you should ask me that, because Jesus told a story about that. And he told a story which I've slightly touched on, but I'm going to tell you the full story in answer to your question, of two brothers, right? The younger brother was the terrible person who did all kinds of wrong things, the drug dealer. And he said to his father one day, Dad, I wish you were dead. Give me half your money. So the father, God in the story, gives him half the money, and off he goes. And he wastes his money, and he ends up in total poverty, and he's starving. He's in a pigsty, which for a good Jewish boy, that's the worst place. And he says, oh, this is crazy. I must come back to the Father and ask for forgiveness. I've done all these things wrong. So he comes back all covered with rubbish, covered with pig muck. And when his father's looking for him, he sees him a long way off, and he throws his arm around him and welcomes him home. So anyone may come home, right? Anyone. Yeah, whatever you've done, come home to the Father. But the story is about two brothers, right? It's sometimes called the prodigal son, but the better name of the story is the story of the two brothers. because there's another brother. And by the way, that older brother, and trust me, I'm an older brother type. I'm literally an older brother. I've got 3 younger sisters, but there's a lot of older brothers in Sevenoaks, which is we think we're all right. We think, in fact, I'm kind of doing God a favor because the older brother is out in the fields working, and he hears this party. You know, the expression "kill the fatted calf." That's the story it comes from, right? They're having the greatest party of all time. And the brother goes, "What's going on?" So he calls a servant. He says, "What's happening?" He said, "Well, haven't you heard? Your brother's come home." Now, you would think the older brother would be very happy. He's furious with rage, furious because he thinks, I'm a good person. I'm a Sevenoaks round table, respectable person. This drug dealer has come home. Now, the father, God in the story, comes out and he pleads with the son to come in. And he says, "My son, everything I have is yours. But shouldn't we have a party and be glad because your brother has come home?" And there the story ends. So in the story, and Jesus tells it to try and, because someone asked him exactly that question, the person who did terrible things but realizes, I need God, they end up in the house, in the party. And the person who thinks, actually, I'm kind of doing God a favor because I'm actually a pretty good person, they end up outside.
That's quite a big kind of shift in our thinking, because so much of life is based on merit, right? So you work hard at school, you get the grades, you work hard at your job, you get paid. But it sounds like you're saying God doesn't really deal with us based on merit, or but rather kind of mercy.
Yeah, grace,
Right?
a free gift. All we need to do, what do we need to do is to accept the offer of Jesus Christ, and we just come with empty hands. Yeah, we don't bring anything.
One last question, I think, to wrap things up. What if you believe in a God but are not religious? Maybe you believe in God, but you've never been baptized, or maybe you've never actually turned up to 8 a.m. church and every week. I don't, maybe you've decided to sleep in, but actually you do your own thing instead of going clubbing.
First of all, the word religious is a word that isn't. It is used once or twice, but it is not really a word that's used in the Bible. So I think believing in God is a good start, right? But in the Bible, there's a man called James, Jesus' brother, and he's having a discussion with someone, and James says, "You believe in God? That's good. The devil believes in God, right? In that sense, the devil knows that there is a God. So knowing that there is a God is a good start. But please, that's not enough. Don't stop there. What we need to do is to trust in Him and to know Him. Now, how do we know God? I'm not against, John, you're going to kick me at this. I'm not against people going to church, right? That's a good thing. That's a good place to meet with other Christians and to meet God. But God is not like a traffic warden who's there with a clipboard outside St. Nick's saying, "Oh, John Canana, yeah, Hannah, well, where's Jeremy?" No, He's a father. He's a father, right? And if you're a child, you want to know and love your parent, don't you? My kids do. I do. I know some people have sad and broken families, but I loved my father who's dead 20 years ago. Every day I could see him, I was happy. And I still think about him more or less every day now. My mother's still alive. That's what being a Christian is. It's about having a relationship with God and knowing God and meeting Him. And the place to meet God is church. Now, right now, actually, as it happens, we can't go to church anyway, can we? So we go by Zoom. But yeah, what I think our very common misunderstanding of Sevenoaks of God is like a traffic warden or a headmaster, that we have to get a certain mark, and part of the marks of getting to God is to go to church or whatever. No, it's not that God loves us because we're good. It's because God loves us that we try to be good. So that the fundamental thing is the love that God has for us, and because of that, we try and follow Him. And it is a good thing to go to church, but it's not the other way round, which is a fundamental misunderstanding that if I go to church, then God will love me. That's the wrong way round.
So it sounds like the question for us in Sevenoaks isn't, are we good enough for God, but perhaps, are we bad enough for God? Because I guess if we don't see that, we don't actually need Him otherwise. So And it's just been really encouraging to hear that actually turning up to, I don't know, 6 a.m. church or whatever, 5 a.m. church isn't what God's after, but actually is after a relationship.
Yeah.
And I know for myself, I've spent 27 years very happily running away from God. He had no place in my life. And for me, that journey began simply by picking up one of these gospel accounts that you mentioned. So in Hope Explored, we'll be looking at Luke's gospel. It's an eyewitness account of Jesus's life. Luke has sort of gathered together lots of information and tied together an orderly account for us to check out. And it will be part of the joy set before us over the next 3 weeks is to read that eyewitness account and to prod it, to poke it, and to meet Jesus in it, really, and to find out what he's really like. But it sounds to me like you have, in Jesus, found someone who is reliable, who's faithful, and most importantly, who is loving and who is not estranged from suffering, which sounds like just the right sort of guy you want next to you when you're going into hospital visits. And
I can't recommend him highly enough.
Oh, thanks so much, Jeremy, for just for sharing your story. And if anyone would like to read about it, I highly recommend it. It's Beyond the Big C, and you can get it from the Saint Nick's bookshop. But even if you just message me, I'll get you a copy if you would like to read that. I can sort that out for you. There were a few more questions, and I do apologize if we weren't able to get to all of them. But let me say that I can guarantee you Hope Explored is all about getting your questions answered. And I mean, you could have one really difficult question, or you could have 20 or 30 really difficult questions. We love answering questions, and we'll do that over the next few Monday nights. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show a short video with my screen share, which is really the introduction to Hope Explored. It's by a man called Rico Tice, who's a great friend of St. Nick's, and then we'll come back together, and then I'll just say a few things before I finish our time together. But I might, just to make sure I don't forget, I just want to say a massive thank you to Jeremy Marshall. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us and sharing so openly.